Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Digital Diary. And this time we're going to be talking about things that'll be extra. That'll be extra. We're all a business and we run our business a little bit differently. And we're going to talk a little bit about extra charges. Those are the things that require a little bit more effort and more time. And generally speaking, they're just a little bit off the norm, not something everybody in the door needs. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is prep work. And that's things that have to happen with the quilt before you get it on the frame. And we all have different takes on that. So let's just bring up a topic and see where that goes. Do you guys press the quilts?
No. In general, I don't. If they want me to, I charge. Most people bring it in ready, and I do use a steamer.
Okay. Some of the other things with the prep work is if there's paper and paper piecing. Anybody get that one? Christine's got a funny look. Go ahead, tell us about
It
that.
does happen. I try not to. Most of the time, it's just little teeny tiny bits, but I not take them in unless it's completely.
Yeah, antique quilts. Grandmother's Flower Garden have those sometimes.
Ooh.
I leave the little tiny bits in. Anybody else on the paper piecing?
Yeah, they'll wash out. In general, I assume.
Well, that's the way it came to me.
Although
How
it can
about
cause stitches.
it can cause problems if it's too much in those seams? Yes, that is true. How about trimming threads?
That's a given, isn't it? That there'll be threads to trim.
Yeah.
I think for me, that is a given. I think you're absolutely right. If it's excessive,
Mhm.
that's a little different.
Yeah, you can usually tell if they've tried. If they've really tried, so many customers bring a quilt in and they go, I know I cut threads, and they're still picking them off as we discuss the quilt. That's different. We're going to pick threads and snip threads no matter what. If you can tell they haven't even tried, especially if it's a white quilt or a light fabric where all those threads are going to show, I have charged for that.
Yeah. Or threads, what you're talking about, varicose veins underneath.
Yeah.
I will take out a certain number in a quilt and then I'll charge for it, especially if you have to open that quilt up and go in and get the threads.
Right.
How about I used to have a surcharge on cat quilts. I don't anymore, but that's only because I don't touch them. I do have other people that do it. I'm allergic.
Oh, well, once in a while, it's not a huge problem, but once in a while you'll get that quilt, that cat fur, dog fur. You cannot quilt all of that in. And if I have to sit and spend 10, 15 minutes rolling a lint brush, every single roll, I charge. It's a lot. And to me, it should come to me in better shape. And I will point that out to them so that they won't incur that charge next time.
Well, these charges, in my opinion, need to be high enough to be a deterrent.
Exactly.
So that they don't do it next time.
Right. I don't want to do it. So it's far better to charge for it and say, it took a lot of time and therefore I have to charge you for it, and then hope that next time they don't want to pay that fine.
Yeah, and if you can catch that up front. How about backings? What are some of the things you do to a backing?
Piece it.
Piece it. I have a charge for one seam. I have another charge for matching two seams.
Yeah, I charge by the seam. So that's the easiest way for me. And you're right. If you have to match it, then it's more work and I charge more for that.
Yep.
I charge by the hour on that.
I do
Okay,
too in general.
That's good. I've never been able to get to that hourly figure because I get interrupted too much. So how do you do that, DeAnn?
I just watch the clock and I write it down on their invoice.
Mhm.
I have it sitting next to me when I'm sewing anything, whether it's their binding or their backing or whatever I need to do. And I just write the start and end time so that if I have several different times because I've been interrupted, I can then still add them all up.
Mhm.
That's interesting. An hourly
There's
charge on
apps
that.
too, if you want
Yeah.
to look
There
into
are
an app
apps.
to track your time.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a good one. I also sew muslin to the edge of a back when they're not big enough.
I've done that. And again, you want it to be a deterrent. If you charge, I just charge per piece that I have to sew on. But if they pay $40 to get pieces sewn on, they make sure the backing's big enough after that. And
Yeah,
it's
my
it
my
all comes
charges
down
aren't
to
that
time.
high. What do you charge for back seams? DeAnn goes by the hour. Anybody
I-
else?
$10 to $12 depending on the size of the quilt.
I
per
do
seam.
10. 10 per seam, doesn't matter on the size. Christine?
I'm typically not seaming my backs. Typically, I rarely have to actually seam a back. I just don't do the volume you guys do. And so when I get a quilt, it typically comes ready to go, and we've already talked about it.
Yeah, you are more of the high-end custom,
Well,
and you
I
see a
also
different
typically am not
caliber.
dealing with my customers in person. I'm typically getting a quilt shipped to me. And
Right.
so that's one of the reasons why we have to talk about a lot of that stuff before it even goes in the mail.
That's true. I tell people I want extra on the sides, and I
Yeah.
still end up sewing on muslin. Okay.
Yeah.
But it sure points out the importance of checking in a quilt and
Mhm.
measuring that back just in case, so that you know before you put it on the machine. Used to be before they left the store, but
Yeah, now it's not.
now it's
but-
before it goes on the machine. It's all measured out, and you know if you have to add those.
Yeah, and you
Right.
know where your problems are going to be. Okay, so
Right.
let's lead to the next one. What about repairs? To
I-
what extent do you guys repair?
Most of the time, if it's a gapping seam and it's already on the frame, I will take a basing stitch to hold it closed and keep on quilting. And then I put a sticky note for them to do the repair. First of all, they might not like how I do the repair. Some people are pickier than others, although I'm pretty good at a blind stitch, but most of the time that's what I do. Now, I just took in an old quilt from someone who didn't really sew. It was her grandmother's quilt, and I repaired 49 seams. I charge by the hour. And I just kept a little, like DeAnn did, I just kept a little chart there. But at the same time, I did a little tick mark so I could say, hey, I fixed 49 seams, so that they understand exactly the time that you are putting in a lot of extra time.
Mm-hmm. How about you, DeAnn?
I don't have very many seams, so I do the same thing that Georgia does. I just will baste it down and then mark it so that when they pick it up, they can see where it is and find it again to fix it.
Okay. Christine doesn't have this problem.
Um,
I do baste them down, but we do close them here by hand.
And I typically will glue it down instead of doing a thread base.
Oh, a glue. So what kind of glue are you using?
Elmer's. That way it washes out.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose that would be
Yep.
fast. But since I'm already basting the edges down, I just keep going right over it. As far as piecing goes, I'd like to go off on a little tangent. How about special projects? And this may be something maybe only I'm doing, but we literally will put the quilt together, grandma's hand embroidered blocks, borders, sashings. We put that stuff together. We finish things that were started a generation ago. And I deal with that differently. I either have in-house and I pay them hourly,
Mhm.
or I have subcontractors.
Yeah, you have people. That's
I
where
have
you do
people.
that. I
But you
don't
know,
have people, and I don't
if
do
you
those. I
If you had
refer
a
them.
friend that
Mhm,
really, really liked this,
mhm,
you can do a subcontractor and just pass that cost right through, or referrals. I
right.
have a gal who does t-shirt quilts. And
Mhm,
if I get a call, I give them her name. She brings it to me for quilting,
yep.
and she charged for the piecing, and I charge for the quilting. But
I
if
just did
it's
that this week. Same thing. I used to do t-shirt quilts and then I realized I don't really like them and I don't need to anymore. So I make sure that I always have somebody or more than one even that can
Yep.
do those kinds of jobs so that I can refer them off. And the good news is she gets the t-shirt work, which she likes. I get the quilting work, which I like. And I think I need to be the resource for my customer if I don't provide a service. I need to at least help them find someone that can do it. And that helps me keep my business too.
And for I look at it that way too. I
Yeah,
am a full service
right,
operation. I mean,
right.
we're right now piecing a quilt for someone in California, and all it is fabric they picked up in the Orient, and they want squares of the same fabric set on points so that the nap of the silk
Right,
goes a different way. But that's not something I advertise. It's just
right.
something that you kind of get, and you can cultivate this if you want to do it. Okay, let's move on to binding. Who binds?
I do.
I
I
have
actually
one,
like it.
You have
one
one.
customer I will bind for.
I like binding. I actually just last night finished probably my sixth one in the last 2 weeks because there are people who bring you quilts who don't know how to do binding. Now, I don't do it cheaply because it takes a lot of time. So my opinion is when you set a price for binding, they should have to go, ooh, they should have to think about whether they can afford it because of the time it takes.
I tell them it's high enough that not everybody takes me up on it. And I do machine on both sides now. I've jacked the hand work up price wise so that the price is the deterrent. But
Right.
it's like anything else you do. I've practiced this enough that I'm good at it and I'm fast. And that is the thing I do. I still do the bindings.
I like
And
binding. I actually enjoy it. It gives me a good reason to sit down and watch a Hallmark movie when they do the handwork. But I still even do the handwork ones. I have different price points. And I have a number of customers who like me to just do the machine to the front and
mm-hmm.
they like to do the hand binding part. So I have a price point for that as well as all machine and then machine to the front and hand to the back. So I try to have all different prices to fit different budgets.
Yeah. And we do scallop borders, double
And
wedding
that's
ring.
pricier,
We
yes.
do them with piping and
Mhm,
rickrack. So that sends your price up. But
mhm,
any of these things, I would caution you to have that skill level before you
mhm.
start advertising it.
Exactly, or you're going to be very frustrated and maybe have an unhappy customer, and we don't want that.
Mhm. But these are things that I track what I'm making on them. And binding is definitely a good money revenue source for me.
Mhm.
I track that with my software. Okay, so how about designs? Any extras in designs? Christine, you make all your own patterns. Do you have a
I do.
designing
So
fee?
for me, it's not considered an extra because that's just what I do and it's rolled into my custom cost from the beginning.
Okay. Well, I know Karen Farnsworth charges extra to change up a design, and she's good at it. So
Yeah, she's a designer.
she's really good at it. So I know she'll add names or things like that. When you're purchasing a design, how do you handle that? DeAnn, do you purchase designs?
I do. If it's a design I know that I'll be using a lot, that I can reuse over and over, I'll just not charge for it. But if it's a specific design for a specific quilt, I had one about a year ago, and she wanted a particular design from a particular designer. It would, his name was a set, and it was $50.
Mhm.
So I knew I could probably use parts of it over, but I wouldn't just use that whole concatenating set again. So I charged her half,
Yep,
and she
that's
was
what I
totally
do.
cool with it.
If I will make suggestions, and I have a ton of designs, and I have several people that want to be part of the process, so they will search the internet and send me pictures,
Yeah,
which is fine. And if it's something I think I can use, I'll buy it, and there's no charge. If it's something and I have 2 or 3 particulars that come to mind that there's no way I'm ever going to use that again,
right.
I charge them half. Or if it's something like the quilt behind me, where there is a definite set and it's pretty spendy,
Yeah.
you better know if you're going to use that one again.
Well, some of those sets are over $100 or
Oh,
100 or
yeah.
more, and it's a lot to spend on a quilt without knowing that you have a shot at doing 5 or 6 of them at least.
Or if you want to
So,
do 5 or 6 of them.
oh yeah,
I've gotten
you're
my money
exactly
worth
right.
out of this one, though.
Every once in a while, you do one and go, no, you wouldn't pay me enough. I did a modern quilt for a designer one time, and it turned out adorable, but I told her I would never do it again for another person. It was a lot of work, and I loved it, but no, it wasn't worth it to me to ever do again.
Yeah, the work part for me is part of my education, so I'm constantly taking on challenges. One of the things I did find in getting these extra patterns is I'll take bits and pieces of them. So I
Mhm.
am constantly chopping things apart. But I do charge for purchasing a pattern. Design time, I don't charge for because, again, I look at it a little differently. Christine rolls it into her overall. I look at it as investing in my future. I learned something every time I take off on one of these.
I would say I think I roll it in because when I'm figuring out my price per square inch, part of that process is thinking up how many hours it's going to take, which includes the design time. And face it, we know we have those quilts that we spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what's going to work for the quilt. And then, then the customer likes it. Oh, except for that one border, and you have to do more. So it's very time consuming. And so I do charge for it, but it's really more I charge by the square inch, but always thinking about how many hours it's going to take me
Mhm.
to get the quilt done.
Well, what
So
about consulting fees? Like you just said, she liked everything but that one border. So if you do design sessions, I
mhm.
haven't done one in a while, but I did charge for that.
Again, it's going to kind of work into that price that when I'm setting up thinking how many hours it's going to take, then that's part of that process. And you and I both know that you have some customers that are going to take a lot more time than others. And
Yes.
so
Hmm.
it's kind of considered right up front when you're getting ready to set a price on something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we all have them. We all know who they are.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
we
we
do.
love them, but time is time.
Okay. All right. So we're planning the quilt. Now we're getting to the quilt. How about any specialty loading fees? Anybody have any of those?
No, I do have a discount since I have a minimum. If somebody brings me several small quilts and they put them all on the same backing so that I can do one load, I don't charge the minimum. I don't give them a discount, but I don't charge the minimum. But other than that, I don't really have too many issues with that.
Well, I do a loading fee and it is separate, but everybody gets it, obviously. And again, if there's more quilts on there, then they don't get the loading fee, but it goes up with size. So my loading fee is more for a king size than it is for a baby quilt.
Mm.
I do have a surcharge for centering the quilt.
Oh, that's not
It
a bad idea because that can take a lot of time.
Oh yeah. Again, it's a deterrent.
Well, I have a customer who puts a label on the backing and they have no idea how much time it takes to make sure that that label is, I will not promise it'll be exactly 2 inches in and 2 inches up, obviously.
Yeah,
But
no promises goes on the work order.
But it's terrifying to think you're going to get to the end and the last half inch of the label is off, so that's not a bad idea. I think I might think about that one because
Well,
I've had a rash of that lately.
When it's intricate, it's $50 and it'll be anywhere from 10 to 50 depending on to what degree.
Well, I've found that by basting everything at the beginning, that it's making it way faster to be able to get everything to fit where I want it to. And so if it's intricate, I'll just bump them up to the next price range and not have a specific amount, but it's just if it goes from edge to edge semi-custom, because
that's a way to do it. I don't baste. So if I am centering, then I do baste and it's extra and it's not my normal. And I think that's the key here. Anything that's not your norm should be extra. So
I did charge extra for a quilt that had a quilt on top and a quilt on the back. That is
I just say no now.
Thing. Yeah, I should have probably, but it turned out okay. But the one thing I always do is make sure they understand you cannot guarantee perfect matching top to back. It just, you can't do it.
The one that went sideways on me real fast, I did do that. I put it in writing and it was off at the bottom and it just soured me to it. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Well,
so we do learn from our experiences.
Right. Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Rush fees.
Don't do them.
You don't do a rush fee?
I don't do rushes.
Oh.
Everybody goes in order now because I am a small business and I own my business. If I had, for instance, I remember a lady brought me a quilt. She was not a quilter, but she made a t-shirt quilt for her parents' 50th anniversary because their adult child of Down syndrome had died, and she made a t-shirt quilt of his shirts for them. She had no idea that people are booked up for 2 months. And so guess what? On the weekend, I threw it on the frame and I did it for her. But in general, you go in the order that you come.
Okay. I do $25 for 2 weeks. My normal is 30 days, $50 next on the frame. And I've already had my Christmas holiday cutoff, and I will rake in some rush fees. I guarantee it.
That's a good idea because I am 2 weeks ahead on all my quilting. So now
it doesn't matter. You get a rush fee.
Saying, everything I'm getting now are things that I already planned that I was cut off. And so that's a great idea. But in general, I don't do rush.
I think I've only done a rush fee once or twice, and it's been to meet a specific deadline. Whether it was a publication deadline or a contest deadline or,
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. How about threads? DeAnn, you go first. Do you like thread?
I like threads. I don't charge a thread fee anymore because I want to be able to use as many threads or as few threads as I want on my custom and not be limited by how much they can afford for that. But every time I change a thread, it's a bobbin charge. So that's $2. So even if I only use it for one block, it's a bobbin change.
Oh, okay.
So there's some charge to it.
All righty.
And I keep a tally on their invoice, so I know exactly how many bobbins or partial bobbins of every single color that I use.
So that's how you charge for your threads?
Per bobbin.
Okay. Now, I think as a business, you have to allocate a charge or an offset at some point. I know a lot of quilters roll it in, but you have to buy that thread. You have to find some way for them to pay you back and to track it, in my opinion. Georgia, how do you handle threads?
Mostly it's rolled into the cost, but I do charge extra for more than 2 threads or for specialty threads that either, like I just did one not too long ago with glow in the dark thread. It's expensive.
Mhm.
And you have to put a lot of it on for it to really show. So you have to do a decent density. So I charge extra for that. But
Okay. You said 2 threads. So is that 2 colors or 2 threads at the same time?
oh, 2 colors, 2
Okay.
different threads. They could be even, both could be black, but one's micro quilter and one's glide. So it, anytime in other words, I'm going to put a different spool on, I charge more for that. It's not a lot, but it keeps people from, I'm the opposite of DeAnn. It keeps people from choosing 16 different threads to deal with, because that takes time. And I don't mind doing it, but I'm going to be paid for the time that, the extra that
Mhm.
it takes. So,
Yeah.
and I'm terrible at keeping track of bobbins. So I gave up on that early on. I was just like, I have no clue
I'm
how
not
many
good enough. I'm
bobbins.
not organized enough for
I
that.
just learned that I'm not, and then trying to figure out how, because every bobbin isn't the same. A bobbin of micro quilter will last you a long time. A bobbin of, Omni won't last near as long. So I just gave up. I'm not disciplined like DeAnn.
Okay, Christine.
Typically, it's rolled into my custom charge because I want to be able to use what thread that quilt needs. And the only difference is if I'm using those specialty threads, which typically I'll have the customer actually purchase. I'll tell them what thread
Oh,
and they can purchase it
Well, that's
and bring it for
interesting.
me.
I would get too nervous with
Um,
that. Who knows
I
what they'll
don't,
bring you?
you don't let them give you thread. You tell them what kind, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Right, that would be the difference. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't let my customers bring thread.
Oh, I sometimes do, especially if they have embroidery, a lot of embroidery on their quilt. I'll have them bring in that embroidery thread and I can use that and then it will just blend right in and you won't even see it.
Mm.
And so, and most of those embroidery threads are fabulous on the gamels. So,
Oh, I use embroidery thread. I use one kind. I only have 3 brands I use, and I stock every color there is.
Oh,
So
that's
I
nice.
don't mind having the embroidery threads, but my thread charges are a little bit different. I charge per square yard, and that is based on the density of the quilting, like a custom quilting with extreme dense backgrounds has the highest charge. And it's not just the thread that goes into the quilt. More importantly, it's the thread that goes into the little bucket
Amen.
because you have to tie off and cut that thread. And even if you have a little seam, you maybe put in 2 inches and you threw away 25.
That's exactly right. All the tie on, tie off, all of that, you get a bigger pile at the end of a custom quilt, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I don't use the specialty threads like the metallics and the real heavy stuff. I tried the 12 weight once and couching it on and I just don't do that. So I don't have those charges.
I do charge extra for any of the specialty threads that have to go really slow, have to be totally threaded through the machine, those sorts of threads. They have a higher per bobbin charge to
That
cover
makes
that.
sense. And I just avoid them. So
I do whenever possible.
okay, how about labels?
I do some of the labels that I sew on with my machine, where I actually stitch it just on the backing, not on the front. We are actually going to be getting an embroidery machine so that we can offer creating labels too. It's a nice add-on, and some people like it actually just stitched in so that it's there, but it's not as obvious in other ways. And I do charge extra for that.
Yeah, names and dates that are quilted
Mhm.
in. And
Right.
I believe I did a Facebook thing on doing that for one of the Gamel things. I do that a lot. I use the photo transfer stuff. I've got about 25 different setup, and I charge for that and put it on. Not a ton of people take you up on it, but
Right.
for sports, for a grandchildren or a t-shirt quilt, I've got all your basic lacrosse, football, soccer, volleyball, that kind of stuff. How
Yeah, a
about
lot
you,
of
DeAnn?
times, yeah, I just do like the oval or a heart or something like that and write it in. And I generally pop another bobbin in so that it will contrast with what I'm stitching on the rest of it, just enough that you can see it. So if it's a red backing, maybe I'll put a gold bobbin in, because that's what's going to show is your bobbin thread, because it's on the back of the quilt. And for a lot of people, that's enough, but it takes time, so there is a fee.
Yeah, I had one lady call me and say, "Oh, I forgot to ask you to put the name on the back. Can you do that now?" And it's like, "No, your quilt's done. I have to do that, or it's just on the back." Oh,
Yeah.
we lost Christine. I have a feeling she'll come back, but that's okay. We'll carry on. DeAnn, labels.
Very rarely. But when I do a label, quite often I will utilize the photo transfer paper, and there's a free app called Canva, and you can design all sorts of fun things on there really fast, really quick, print it off, slap it on the back, and then stitch right over the top.
I guess I'll have to look that one up. Canva?
Mhm.
Like canvas, but Canva?
Yep,
Yes.
I just got that one not very long ago. I haven't even had time to play with it much.
Okay.
Oh, it's quick and easy. Quite often I'll take a picture of the quilt and then type over whatever I need, and then print it and iron it on the back and
Oh,
stitch right over.
cool.
Okay, that works. That works. So, anything else that we can think of? Shipping. I charge the shipping, which is the actual shipping cost, but I have a post office that's next door. Oh, Christine's back. We'll let her in. How's that?
She's back.
Hello there. Would you like to tell us anything about labels?
So typically I only do labels if the customer supplies them. I have occasionally been known to put fabric on freezer paper and throw it through the inkjet printer to print a label directly onto the fabric, but it's a rare occasion. Typically, I'm just doing that for my own. I will do that occasionally for others. I have an older inkjet that I usually save for just those purposes.
It's only got so
jammed or
many
stuck.
prints left, right?
Yep.
Okay. So shipping. Now, especially with the virus, we're doing a lot of shipping now. I personally just charge the actual shipping cost. I usually have extra boxes. The post office is next door and UPS is a block away. I am thinking maybe I should be charging for all the tape that I put on these things. What are your thoughts on shipping?
I do a lot of shipping. That's typically how I'm doing all of my quilts in general. So typically when I have a customer send me a quilt, I have them just put it in like one of those Tyvek mailers, because it's a lot cheaper than a full box. And if it's coming to me in pieces, it's not a big deal. It goes back in a box though. And so the box charge is on there, but it's in addition to a straight through. I just carry the shipping charge. However much I have to pay for shipping goes straight on their invoice, plus the fee for the box.
That's pretty much what I do for the most part. Sometimes I'm if I have a box around, I don't care, but I'm not hunting all over the place to find a box. And
I typically ship in brand new boxes like I would a show quilt. So
yeah, and I always put them in a bag in the box, but so I've charged for the box and the shipping, and I haven't really charged, I guess you would call it handling, but I also, it's not an integral part of my business either. I certainly don't do the production that Paige does, and so I don't worry about it as occasional as I am. And these days, if you get an outing to drop something off at the post office, yay, you're out of the house.
I know, but it makes me nervous standing in line.
Oh, well, there's that.
Yeah, but I'm in a city. I'm in a
I print the labels online, so all I have to do is go drop it.
Yeah, that's what I do. I do mine online.
Yeah,
So
PayPal's got a label thing that if they order something from through PayPal on my website, I can print the label, but I can also go in and print a label even if they don't.
mm,
And that has cut down on the stand in line at the post office.
mhm.
I don't know if they have one for UPS. Maybe I should check that out.
They have an app. FedEx and
UPS
UPS
has
have
an app.
Yeah.
I guess I'm checking that one out too. How about you, DeAnn, on shipping?
I don't ship. My customers, I receive quite often shipments, but then they will either pick it up or have somebody they know in town pick it up for them.
Mm.
And so I haven't had to ship.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting how each one of our businesses are different? We all have many of the same things, like extra time, extra effort, something that's out of our norm. And that's different for all of us, and how we handle it is different. I love hearing how other people do their business because that's always interesting to me.
And it can help you evaluate how you handle it and if you should do it differently.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're not doing binding now, think
Mm,
about it. I mean, when I look at what I've made in binding charges, and I,
yeah,
I do charge them separately so I can go back and look,
right.
it is definitely worth my while.
Well, and the thing with binding is you can, if you're doing stuff by hand, you can be doing that while your machine's working for you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always the best thing with having the digital quilting machine in the first place.
It is. We have 5 machines, and we have a serger for sewing on, it's a chain stitch machine for zippers, and 3 other machines. And the other night, I had 8 machines running at the same time. It wasn't just
Woo!
me, but it, to your point, yeah, put
Yeah.
that binding on while you're making money somewhere else.
Mhm.
Anything else you guys would like to add or think about for extra charges?
I have backing fabric, especially minky, that they can't always get somewhere else, and willing to do it because they may not also want the minky mess in their house.
We don't trim minky. How about trimming? I love your backing thing. Is the only thing you carry minky?
No, I have some 108-inch wide backings, but just not a lot. Most of my customers will piece their backs to coordinate with the front, but not always, especially those that bring in a quilt top they didn't make.
Right.
Or they bring in one and go, I thought my back was big enough. I know it was. And it's
That quilt grew. Yeah, I do carry, I got about 300 wide backings right now. I don't carry the minky, only because it doesn't play well with other things in the studio. It's too
It's a
messy.
mess.
And that's another way to expand out your business. And I started with just a handful and moved on from there.
Yeah,
And
I don't have the storage for that.
well, I have a storefront now. I started in my basement.
Yeah.
Trimming. That's the other thing we didn't talk about. Trim the
In general, I don't, but I do have a few customers, especially senior citizens that live in smaller housing, but I do charge for it. And I'm very specific. I make them write down where they want it trimmed. That's one reason I don't trim, is because once you cut it off, you can't put it back on. And I just don't want to make any mistakes. So I don't trim without being paid and told exactly where.
DeAnn?
Another thing that I sell is batting, because I like to have a little control over the type of battings that go on the quilt to make sure that it's going to give the look that the customer wants.
Right.
Extras on batting. Okay, I'm going to jump in here on this one because I forgot about it. I do sell, I've got 10 kinds of batting, but if they bring me a packaged bat,
Ooh.
I have a $12 surcharge.
Mm.
Getting that thing, the wrinkles, And it's dealing with it. It's extra time, extra effort.
And I do have a couple of battings I won't do, but I don't say I don't like it. What I say is, I want you to have the best quilt possible. And my experience with these products is that you won't. And so I do have a couple. Most people buy mine though. They trust mine. They know I like it, and they've had good experiences with it. So most people buy mine.
Batting is
I
a great
typically make
extra.
my batting a little bit cheaper than what they can buy at the store, just so that they buy mine.
Well,
That way, you know, I'm almost guaranteed that they'd rather have mine than bring me their own.
Well, my reaction to that is I don't undercut any of the quilt shops or anything, but I sell by the linear inch.
That's what I do.
So
Same
therefore,
thing.
it is cheaper to buy here.
Right, because they don't have to buy, if it's just a little bigger than a queen size, but not really a king, they're just paying by the inches. And that's what I do. I just don't want to have any quilt shop upset that I'm undercutting. So in general, I charge pretty much what they do, but by the inch instead of by
I think
a set
Christine,
size.
She's not in competition with
No,
the Chris shop.
right.
She's in a class all her own.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, Paige, do you have a charge for double batting?
Absolutely. Well, I charge the double bat, but I don't charge extra loading on the double bat. And because I do it so frequently, it's not that much extra effort.
Yeah.
And it takes extra effort. It's just you're so used to it.
Yeah. Anything that I become used to, I don't need more. That like sewing down basting the edges of the double wedding ring. That's easy for me now.
And you just roll it into your double wedding ring charge, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, double wedding ring has its own classification for a charge in quilting. And as far as trimming goes, we trim everything automatically at 1/8 of an inch off the quilt top. Well, I got a 12-foot cutting table here on the back of my machine. If they bring their own bat, we do not trim. If they ask for no trim. I got a whole bunch of stamps now. I love my stamps. I'll show you my stamps. So I have a do not trim stamp. I have a cat stamp. I have binding stamps. It's always fun to, it'd be nice to have stickers too. It's kind of like kindergarten. I got stamps.
But it makes it easy because you have a group of people working. That makes a huge difference, and you need to be able to identify, because I know when I have special instructions on my worksheet, I circle them like center the back, or I circle them in red. You bet. It's in my special notes, but those are small and I might miss that. So I circle it in red and anything like that. And I think that would be even more important where you have multiple people working on quilts.
We have procedures, and we do everything the same, and communication is key. And it's communication with yourself and somebody else, and with yourself today and yourself tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but it's gone.
Well, that's why I write everything down. Like for instance, if they want the pattern run looser or denser, every single thing is written down, and anything that is not the norm is circled in red on the worksheet. Just because I know me, it's just so easy to jump in and get started and go, oh, wait, there's a label on the back and I didn't see it.
Yeah, I put the size of the overall design right on the worksheet. I figured that out before I get to the machine. So that we know. I'm not as disciplined as DeAnn. I could not do tick marks for bobbins. I tried tracking how much time I spent on things, and when it was just me and one machine, I could do it, but I was still not that good at it. So I don't even try tracking time now.
Well, for me, I hang the invoice next to the machine, and so
mine too.
As I have to walk by it to go to my bobbin winder, and there's a pen right there. And so even on both machines, it's just right there, and I can easily do that. And it's just something that's easy for me, whereas a lot of the stuff you do, I
Yeah.
would.
We're all different. And once you make it a habit,
Mhm.
that's when it becomes easy. And what is it, 21 days you have to do something?
Yeah. But I think part of it is just knowing yourself, because I tried the keeping track of bobbins because that's really common here. And I realized really fast, no, that doesn't work for me. But honestly, that, it's just knowing yourself. And if it becomes easy and you don't think about it, why do you don't feel the need to charge for it? If you have to work harder at it and think a lot more about it, that's when you go, wait a minute, this is taking so much more time. I should be getting compensated for it. So it's just the process. And that's
true.
why you and Paige, I know you and I both agree on this, is evaluate. You really do have to evaluate your business. If you are in business and you just keep doing it the same year after year, you're cheating yourself probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there were things I remember when I first started and I didn't have any minimums. And I remember somebody saying to me, oh, you will. And it didn't, within a year, I was like, I will have a minimum, because, a tiny little quilt, $18, that wasn't worth it. I don't have time for that. So evaluation is important. And that's what helps you, I think, with setting up fees like this.
Oh, yeah. Tracking. I mean, record keeping should be the ability to track information, but retrieve it and analyze it.
Right.
And that's why I know that I'm doing well with my binding. I'm fine with it. I've gotten faster and I'm making money on it. Well, I think we've taken some time here. This is always fun to get together with you guys. I love to hear your views.
Yeah.
And this was something I think everybody that's in business can relate to, that there's always something extra. It's one of the things that makes this business fun. It's not the same every day.
Exactly.
So thank you everyone for joining us on this edition of Digital Diary. That'll be extra. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.